now have the honor of introducing our final presentation for the 2025 March Classic. Part of looking ahead to the next 15 years is understanding the role that innovation will play in all our lives and on our farms. From artificial intelligence to virtual reality, mountains of data, and tractors that drive themselves, opportunities for change and growth are everywhere. Today, we have a panel of agricultural innovators joining us to talk about the possibilities of the future of what our role is in keeping innovation alive and well in Canada. Our moderator, Joe Dales. Joe has more than 35 years of agricultural industry experience. He began his career in sales, marketing, and management, working with leading companies such as Pfizer, BASF, First Line Seeds, and NK Syngenta Seeds. In 1997, he co-founded agcareers.com, and in 1998, he co-founded farms.com. In 2019, he co-founded RHA Ventures, Inc., and leads their value-adding investment in the agricultural and food innovation startup sector. RHA has made more than 35 investments and continues to support entrepreneurs with hands-on experience business mentoring. Joe has been involved in successfully launching over 40 ag tech, innovating ranging from crop protection products, seed varieties, herbicide tolerance canola, biologicals, and a range of innovative products and services. Joe has an honors business in chemistry from Western University and a master's in business administration from Wilfrid Laurier University. He is passionate about bringing innovation to agriculture and helps farmers improve productivity. Please welcome Joe Dales.
Thanks, Julie. Come on up, guys. Okay.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks. Hopefully everybody's caffeinated and ready for a nice, robust discussion here. So, really honored to be here. Thanks, Julie, Crosby, the board, Victoria, and the staff for welcoming us. So, I'm always excited. This is a home base for me, and I know a lot of people in the audience, so it's going to be fun. I'm originally from Bruce County, so people may know my brother Andy. He is a partner at Lang Farms with Tony Lang and farms up there. But my career has been mostly in the agriculture and food, industry, and had the pleasure of working with a lot of great folks. This panel is kind of a dream team of local innovation experts, and innovation in my mind is going to help us through the challenges. There's always challenges. They just manifest in different ways and with different politicians, because farming's so darn difficult, and we always have to innovate. And this crew that's usually here is a very innovative audience, so looking forward to having this discussion. There's all kinds of neat waves of technology coming down the pipe. People talk about artificial intelligence. Probably not too many people in the room here think about that day to day, but it will influence your business over, say, the next 10 to 15 years. I was fortunate enough to be on the early edge of when the internet came to agriculture, and those first few years, farmers didn't even have computers, but eventually it slowly adapted to where now having your smartphone is probably one of your more important tools on the farm to keep you connected with your family, with your business, with the markets, and with news and information. So I think artificial intelligence will have some of those same impact on us. We just don't know what it'll look like today or tomorrow, but it will influence us, and I think in a lot of different ways. I'm going to introduce our wonderful panel here. I'm going to start with you on the end, Paul Raymer. Can you tell us a little bit, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your great company, and what you do, and what kind of technologies you're working with.
Okay, thanks, Joe. This is my honor. First off, it's a great honor to be here. I know there's a lot of familiar faces echoing Joe, so great to see and reconnect with so many. And again, honor to be on the panel here with these fine gentlemen. My name's Paul Raymer from the big town of Tavistock, and our company is called Soil Optics. And what we provide is a digital topsoil mapping solution. And what that means is we're helping growers with this information set to be able to identify where the potential opportunities are within their field on chasing for their inputs, where they could possibly save and where they can potentially add more. And if so, how big is that area and how much? So it's dissecting down and a further understanding to a finer detail with what their factory being, let's say, their field, to that level of understanding. So really painting out a picture of variability for each and every soil property. So we've been at this for 13 years now, and we've expanded into 27 countries. Overall, there's a tailwinds towards, let's say, soil mapping, and this is why we're capturing this wave. And we have Chuck is one of our prized customers, but we have an expansive network across Canada, North America, but pretty much in all the major agricultural regions around the world. So we have a great level of pride in that. And again, we hire talent locally, and then we also have some talent abroad to be able to help service our technology firm.
What technologies are you kind of deploying that weren't done before?
So what we've been doing is, well, first off, we're often asked this question. We're offering we still have soil samples in our equation. So we work along with, let's say, all the major labs here, right in here in Ontario, but also we are incorporating, I don't want to get too scientific here, but we're using gamma radiation. So we have a special sensor that is mounted to an ATV type vehicle or any particular type of vehicle that is capturing the first level of information, this natural signal coming out of the soil. It's hitting us as we're sitting here, but we can't taste, smell, or feel it. But this instrument gives a quantification of something that we can be able to use as a foundation of understanding of the field from a geological perspective, and then we complement it with traditional samples to be able to paint out these high-resolution property models. So once we have this data, we do a data modeling process, which was historically done by myself in the early days. It used to take me 8 to 10 hours just to do one field. Now, fast forwarding, and I'll touch on that in a second, we can do it basically in a matter of seconds. And this is all to, let's say, the credit of the young skilled team that we have. All of our development is done here in Ontario. We partnered up with Niagara College a number of years ago to be able to help us develop from the ground up a data automation system to be able to take, let's say, our input field data and then output it into something that is useful for the growers. So again, it has an incorporation of AI in it, but we still have, let's say, a co-pilot team of expertise that helps us with painting out, let's say, that final product. Does that help, Joe?
Yeah, so sensors, computers, big data, the terms that you'll hear, we actually are bringing some of these new technologies to improving what you know about your soil and how we can get higher yields. So that's great, Paul. I've had tremendous opportunity to travel the world and meet farmers in the US, South America, Europe, Western Canada. I'm always delighted. I always benchmark them against our best here. And I'm always impressed with how well we come out against, some of the best farmers around the world. Our next guest, a lot of people will know in this room, I've gotten to know really well the last few years. Chuck Barisic is one of those farmers that can go toe-to-toe with anybody around the world, especially sharing about what he's been working on the last few years. So welcome, Chuck. Can you introduce yourself and who you are and what you're working on?
Sure. Chuck Barisic, I know quite a few people in the room here, and so I got to be careful because as I was telling one of my neighbors in the meeting room that once you're 30 minutes from home, you can be classed as an expert. So I'm exactly 45 minutes, so I'm good. I grew up just outside of Bothwell, Ontario. We have a long-term no-till cash crop farm. And when we started our agronomy company back in 2001, data and technology and trying to advance it, it's always been an interest of mine. And it's important when you're doing your work, like farmers farm because they love it, and I think part of farming and the technology is something that I really, really like. And I look for pieces of technology that will advance our agricultural production. So not technology for technology's sake. It has to do something. It has to enhance. It has to add on. One of the reasons why we worked with Soil Optics right from 2015 was we looked at that as a way to advance our farming operations. So we've done that for quite a long time. And then in 2021, our experience with precision agriculture and GPS receivers, field computers, it led me to thinking that autonomous vehicles is the next evolution, is the next step of precision ag, and we founded agri-tech Robotics in 2021. And we'll be operating over 30 robots here in Ontario in a range of crops, mostly doing seeding of some kind and weed control, but also some other new tech. A lot of it involving cameras, sensors, and data analysis is the next piece. So we've got a busy summer ahead of us.
Last but not least, Doug, I want you to introduce yourself and your company. I don't know that a lot of people in this room will be aware of Vive Crop Protection, but it's one of Canada's ag tech darlings. They haven't done very much marketing in Canada yet, but that's because they've been growing steadily in the US. So introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your organization and what you're working on.
Good afternoon, folks. Doug Bauman, Chief Technology Officer of Vive Crop Protection. I'm sitting here today because in 1999 I decided that I wanted to make my mark in the field of nanotechnology. And I know what you're thinking. We're all about to be in a Marvel movie because we have robots, nanotechnology, and gamma radiation up on stage here. But I promise we won't have any unexplained reactions and no one will go green despite how bright that darn light is, eh?
Exactly.
So my journey in nanotechnology, starting in 1999 and then moving forward for about 11 years, was in pharmaceuticals, principally using nanotechnology for the pursuit of human health as it related to the central nervous system, your brain and spinal cord. And that's really important because I was under contract to a little firm called Novartis, which some of you may know in the past century also had an ag division. And a gentleman by the name of Ravi Ramachandran came to me and said, Doug, I really need you to know that the intersection between human health and nanotechnology and crop protection and nanotechnology, that there is that intersection. And so thus began for me a return to ag. I don't know if anyone else here had the mind-numbing first job of working in a cherry processing plant when you were a kid. That happens to have been my very first job, working in processing Michigan cherries that were shipped up to Ontario. Fast forward 15 years almost, now Vive Crop Protection. The company is the North American pioneer and to this date, the only Health Canada PMRA and US EPA registrant to combine any crop protection chemical, that active ingredient, with nanotechnology to make the best version you've ever had of that crop protection chemical. So Vive fits what I call the middle path. Those of you who have bought crop protection inputs before would be familiar with the big 5 agricultural chemical companies, and they do amazing work to invent brand new active ingredients. But as those active ingredients age, there's a fork in the road. You'll typically see an individual molecule get paired in a premix, and it will move up in price. And then you'll get a generic entrant who keeps that solo, that singular crop protection chemical, and it moves down in price. And that splitting, that fork in the road, leaves the middle open. And so what Vive generally does is take trusted agrochemicals that are perhaps 15 or 20 years old and uses nanotechnology to make them the best version of themselves that they've ever been. We do that in a few different ways by partnering with large companies. So in terms of how we go to market, Joe, we will sell our technology and license it. But the reference to Vive growing in the United States comes from the fact that we had a 5-year commercial head start in the United States because of the different regulatory regimes in the 2 countries. And so with that 5-year head start, we are in the awkward and interesting position of being a 100% Canadian company that to this day sells 99% of our wares in the United States, helping US farmers be as competitive as they can be. Now, I'm very happy that it's 2025 and not early 2023, because if I was here in 2023, I wouldn't have good news to share about the Canadian landscape for Vive, but I can share, sitting here in 2025, that 2 of our foundational nanotechnologies are now PMRA approved, and so we have seen an acceptance by Health Canada that nanotechnology can be a force for good.
So you started a theme of commercialization. I'm going to keep on that thread. I see those 2 beautiful John Deere tractors there. Typically, commercialization in agriculture, the big boys have lots of resources. They can bring them to market. They have dealership. They have service. Small, new startup companies don't have any of that infrastructure, and yet they may have a wonderful new tool that will help you on your farm. Can you discuss a little bit about your commercialization strategy, and then tell us a little bit about, what the next, say 5 years in Canada looks like, and what markets you're after, and what kind of products you have coming?
So commercialization strategy is, it is a bit like a movie for us, where there's been a couple of iterations. As a small Canadian startup coming out of the university system, the first idea that folks gave us was, you should absolutely just license everything that you have to someone who already has money, dealerships, and resources. And so we tried that for a while. And it turns out that just because a potential partner has money and resources does not a good partner make. And Vive realized that our role as a bit of a disruptor was something that we needed to embrace, because we realized that some of our technologies weren't going to be adding to the bottom line of the inputs companies. We would actually be saving farmers money. And so with that slight differentiation, when we realized that not everyone wants to sell a better mousetrap, we started to go it alone. And that has been what our most successful path has been. We now have a portfolio of 7 different fungicides, insecticides, and nematicides for sale in the United States. We have herbicides coming. And what we generally find is, it's kind of actually that Canadianism where you have to go succeed somewhere else before you are considered successful, but not Canada, the US. It's almost like within ag-retail, when we demonstrate that our product is superior to an incumbent, only after we demonstrate that in the marketplace, then an offer to come and buy the product from us then comes. Mm-hmm. But once we've already been successful, we've paid our tuition, the answer is no thank you, and we will continue to build our branded portfolio. And so today we are a traditional ag chem company in the sense that we go through distribution. UAP is our Canadian distributor, and our products are available at bricks and mortar retail.
And what product and what market are you in?
Well, today, Asteroid 390 is Vive's first Canadian product. It happens to be a potato-focused product, so I'm in the wrong room for 2025 with apology. Vive does have other products coming that will absolutely land in the Ontario market starting in 2027. And when you see that Vive logo, what you should realize from the get-go is that the active ingredient in that product will be one that you already know and trust, but it will have the most modern delivery technology, formulation technology, and nanotechnology in it, and it will outperform whatever previous version of that product you've already have on your farm.
Perfect. Chuck, ag robots is an emerging, very early stage technology segment. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you've been working on, and then how are you overcoming them? How are you developing them so that 5 years, 10 years down the road, people have confidence that it'll help them on their farm?
Well, I think I took a very traditional approach initially, and I looked around for a robot that I would understand. And so the first robot that we had was the DOT robot from Saskatchewan. And the reason why I chose that one was that it looked very familiar to what I had. It had a diesel engine, it had a fertilizer spreader box on it. It was something that I thought, you know, if we figure out how this thing works, we can make a go of it. And what I realized, you know, going through is that it's not as simple as just doing what we're already doing and taking the driver away. I think that wasn't really the right solution. It had to really make an improvement. And so from that, we have moved on to trying to understand from farmers what the actual pain points are. And what we've discovered is that, you know, weed control, specifically labor that's being hired around weed control, is actually the problem that needs to be solved. And so then once we know that, the other piece that we have to solve is how reliable is that robot? You know, the farmers, the difference, you know, kind of between automation in a factory versus automation out on a farmer field is that our window is so short. And so we can't afford to have, you know, little breakdowns. We can't afford to have the robot stop because the farmers are so reliant on it. And, you know, cost is a factor. So the robot has to be able to, the robot can't always compete on just straight labor cost. So the robot has to enhance the yield, it has to enhance the viability of the crop, or it has to open a window up. You know, the example would be that if a farmer says, you know, without bringing in 200 workers, for example, I cannot grow this crop, but I don't know how I can't get those workers. The robotic technology allows the farmer to even consider growing a crop like that because they remove some of these other obstacles. So we're looking at, you know, reliability, cost, feasibility. We're trying to research logistics. You know, how do you recharge the robot? How do you bring it to the field? In what use cases? And all of these things have to align to have a good solution. So we spent the last 3 years partnering with groups like the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture and Food, the University of Guelph, Vineland, other organizations. We are part of a group that founded an autonomous working group. We've had support from Ag Expert and Farm Credit, from yourself, and other likewise entities to try to assemble these use cases and provide, you know, viable solutions to growers. And, you know, it's taken several years. We've been fairly I want to say, slow-paced at it. We actually consider that we're moving very, very slowly, trying to figure out what is the right tech and what's going to work for our farmers.
Well, and I like your philosophy of, I want to have comfort before we start marketing it. So
Right.
if you're not comfortable as a farmer that the tech isn't going to be valuable for somebody, you're not just going to jam it out into the marketplace and make it their problem. So
Well, and I think
that's the right approach, actually.
Yeah, and I think we, growing up, in the farming community, and even with our agronomy company, my brother and I have always found it very, very hard to go to a customer and say, hey, you should buy this product because somebody told us it was wonderful. And the people would come to us and say, well, do you use it on your own farm? And if I say no, well, then why would they want to use it? So we kind of grew, we spent the last number of years trialing and demonstrating and testing things, on our own farm. And to go back to soil optics was one of those things. We spent a long time working with soil tests, EC scanners, soil optics, trying to say, what is the solution? So we're taking that same approach to the robotics side of things. We're taking these robots to farmers' fields, we're putting them in real-world conditions so that we're comfortable to say, this robot actually works. And we've got 4 or 5 models now that we're very, very confident are ready for the Ontario market.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. A lot of these innovations are so new that there's potential for risk, financial risk, crop risk. And so the good thing about what Chuck's been doing is been pulling together the ecosystem, be it Farm Credit Canada, OMAFA, University of Guelph you mentioned, and get a lot of smart minds, as well as farmers. You had some great cooperation from a lot of farmers. All those smart minds testing some of these new technologies, breaking them, fixing them, that iterative approach.
It's not hard to break them.
But that's the key thing, right? You want them for Ontario conditions, so that they're saving time, saving money when a farmer actually says, I want to try one on my farm. And so that's been impressive, is the ecosystem and the support from researchers, extension people, government. They've all stepped up and tried to help, which I don't think we see very often in other jurisdictions. Paul, commercialization, how have you tackled it, and what little tips and successes have helped you, say, get it into Europe, for instance?
Yeah, part of our journey of commercialization, well, first off, just a bit of history and how we started was, as I've mentioned before, I was the data modeler back in the office, and my dad was in the field doing the collection. And we were testing things out, trying to see if, let's say, there was going to be appetite for, let's say, this product that we were working on, and there was winds starting to blow of maybe some good possibilities of potential with this. And so we were starting to get phone calls from other agronomists who were offering, let's say, a soil sampling service and hearing some good things, and they were asking how they could potentially play a part. So that was a bit of the foundation of our history back in 2016. And Chuck wasn't long after that. It was probably at Joe's conference of Precision Ag Conference not many years ago. And again, that was just, I think it's been curiosity what has fueled a lot of the phone calls that we had received, and it started locally, then it has started to expand locally. And I think overall why we get the appetite that we do, and again, not trying to paint that we have a silver bullet by any means, but at least, again, coming back with what I was touching on earlier, as far as, let's say, the tailwinds towards appetite towards soil maps in general, ones with a certain mindset have been thinking, well, maybe there's a problem, or maybe, let's say, well, the relationship that we have, let's say, in our business marketplace is, let's say, with retailers like Chuck, and ones who have a relationship with ones like yourselves. And so maybe it's ones like yourselves that are maybe talking with the retailer, and the retailer is maybe calling us or surveying the marketplace who has, let's say, soil mapping. And that's been part of, let's say, our fuel for the commercialization. outside of we're continuing to be able to expand our exposure and market, et cetera, to being able to paint hopefully a good picture of with what we feel that Soil Maps brings to the agricultural marketplace.
Perfect. This audience here, the Ontario farmer, they travel really well. And we've all traveled. We'll be at a trade show in Iowa or the machinery show in Louisville. And all of a sudden, well, there's John from Canada. And there's Fred from Canada. And what tricks have you learned? What have you seen that's worked around the world? Any comments on, I always try to bring good ideas home. And I want my brother to know about new products, new services, so that they can take these innovations and drive them on their farm. Doug, you've just gotten back from your excellent adventure. What have you seen? What have you heard? What do you want to share with the audience here? You be our eyes for your travel.
So I was, just last week, was World Agri-Tech, so I was in San Francisco, and then the week before that, Commodity Classic in Denver. And in my travels, I haven't gone as far south as Joe has, but I've gone almost as far east as Moldova, the very, very far edge of the European Union. It's really not a given, it's not a single thing that I want to bring back. It's an attitude. And when I say this, I feel like I want to reinforce what I see in Canada and just reinforce the value of it. And the attitude is that 1% matters. The attitude is that when you're searching for what to do next, what people sometimes call the next big thing, if you wait for the next big thing, which is, I think 10% from a given innovation is actually quite a large number. If you wait for that, you might be waiting a very long time. And when you do think you see, for example, a 10%, the risk that comes with it is also normally quite large, and you can trick yourself then into waiting until someone else has done it. The have you used it on your farm question is actually a way to avoid risk. Mm-hmm. So using the 1% methodology, it lowers the bar, it gives you an opportunity to learn more from every single trip, but it normally brings the cost down of adoption, right? We're not talking about a brand new piece of iron that is, multi-million dollar, and it just also makes the speed there. It also means, and I guess now I'm sharing a little bit about myself, is that I would prefer not to make one big bet and try and win on that one big bet. I would much prefer to make 10 smaller wins and win on 6 or 7. And so that attitudinal, what will I do this year that is different, and how will I stack it with what I've already been doing? That to me is the winning attitude. And by the way, when I was in San Francisco, I saw a couple of good Canadian companies on either side of our booth, one being Meridian and one being AGI. So this idea that you travel all over the world and there's Canadian firms working to sell in foreign markets is very true.
Paul, any thoughts or comments? You are always on the road, it seems.
Well, it kind of comes and goes, but echoing a lot with what Doug was saying, yeah, as far as various things that maybe I've seen while being on the road, I'm not sure if there's anything that's really big breakthroughs, but yet it's always reassuring to know that there's a lot of good minds that are working to be able to try to work on, let's say, breakthrough, or let's say just that 1% gravitational push into something that is going to be able to help chase, let's say, that level of efficiency, whatever that may be. But overall, outside of being at World Agri-Tech last week, but even, let's say, being boots on the ground in some of the various ag sectors around the world, like we have a very mature market here, but to get into some of the more economic sensitive regions like India, even Indonesia, that's just some of the South Asian, there is a strong appetite for what we have here. And so we should have, let's say, a level, not that we should be getting comfortable, we have, let's say, a lot at our disposal of our hands for, let's say, tools and resourcing to be able to do with what we need to do. There's a lot that are aspiring to be able to get with what we have, but also on top of that, there's a lot of smart minds happening in, let's say, these regions that are coming up with innovative ideas, thoughts, resourcing that we may be able to be leveraged on in the very near future.
Chuck.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that I see, and I've spoken in France and Portugal and the UAE, South Africa. I've been kind of all over the place. What's interesting when you sit with farmers, like when from another country, and they find out that I farm as well. A lot of times the vision of Canada is large wheat fields in Saskatchewan. And when you talk to them about Ontario and Quebec and the Maritimes and the diversity of agriculture that we have here, it's actually quite surprising to them that we have so much potential in our agricultural sector. And that's done a couple of things. That has attracted a lot of interest in developing some of the technology here in the province, for our farmers, which I think has been very encouraging. The farmers in other countries face all the same challenges that we have. When you talk to a farmer from Germany or from France or from wherever, there's always, I can't get labor, or the labor that I am getting is costing too much money. The iron that I'm buying costs too much money. The neighbor down the road is paying way too much rent and I don't understand how he's doing it. The same kind of stories that we always hear. But the interesting thing is that, we can take that and try to advance, what we're doing. And you're right in the 1%. One of the things that's happened, even in my own home area that I've noticed, is that, incrementally things have improved greatly. Obviously the weather plays a big factor in this, and whether you have a drought or not. But we've seen yields of corn in our area go from I think when I first started farming, I was given 104 bushel an acre crop insurance guarantee. That was the yield for Euphemia Township. And it was a bonus because Mosa Township was 102. And now, like 200 bushel corn is kind of table stakes anymore. And so these incremental changes are important. And the next big thing that's going to come is adding, more skill, more precision, onto some of these tasks, and taking us to another plateau. I don't know what that plateau is, and I don't even know what crop it's going to be, but that's what I've discovered, and we're in a very good location to actually kind of lead this innovation and change based on where we are. We have lots of moisture. We have lots of access to universities and researchers. We have a manufacturing sector that's right here. We have a lot of advantages located where we are.
Yeah, building on that, I've operated down in the U.S. for probably 25 years, and we set up offices for farms.com in Ames, Iowa, in the research park at Iowa State University, which is one of the premier universities for agriculture. We had offices in North Carolina, where NC State's a great university. And I had the opportunity to move and live down in the US for a couple of years. And my big takeaway is the Americans are so darn confident, and we're Canadian. We're more humble. We're as smart. We work as hard. Our farmers. I'll put our farmers up toe to toe with anybody in the world with our skill set. But we see with Trump, he's their confidence on steroids, and we just need a little bit more of that. And so the last speaker was it the growth mindset, the green brain. I'm going, all right, yeah, we need that, but we also need to get the elbows up and just be confident that we can compete around the world, and we do deserve to have a great industry here. So that's kind of my takeaway when I come home. I'm always looking and trying to benchmark. Can we compete? Can we compete? Are we smart? We lose on the bullshit meter a little bit, but I'm good with that, right? Because we're harder working and we'll win because we're nice, right? Nice and smart.
Can I build on that there, Joe?
Yeah.
So I've had the privilege to be on a number of Canadian trade mission trips. And by the way, I believe, let's say, our Canadian trade mission service is probably one of our best kept secrets. So this has been one of the fortunate opportunities why I've been able to get into various corners of the globe. But on some of the recent ones, this is what the service has been informing us as delegates, saying we need to be, and for us to be sending back the voice, especially in, let's say, turbulent times that we're in, to be raising our voice and be getting it broadcasted out there. And I was even mentioning to these guys earlier, when I was in the Philippines there a couple months ago, went to a large feed mill, and they were asking, and they're a big consumer of soybeans, and they were asking if we grow soybeans here in Canada. And so, again, I was the only ag delegate on that tour, and I quickly informed them, and I brought the information back to some of the various resourcing here, but I'm just communicating that this might be just one little example of what some of the legwork that we need to do, because they were saying that the two big parties that are at their door is the U.S. and Australia. And so they're just looking for another party to at least be at the table so they can have options. But they speak highly of Canada. They have, let's say, that level of respect, but they think that we just grow wheat here. So again, that's just one little tidbit of information of some legwork that we may need to be doing going forward.
Go Team Canada.
Yeah.
That's the way.
We're gonna open it up for a few questions from the audience. So I think there's a couple of microphones there. So if you have a question on a particular technology or an idea, come bring those forward. I'm going to give you guys a couple minutes each while people line up to share some final thoughts. Kind of looking forward. What are you working on? What technology excites you that the farmers in this room should just at least have on their radar, and if they see an article, they can maybe read up on it and set themselves up for the future. I'll start with you, Chuck.
Well, I think the things that I'm kind of most excited about is, we're going to have an opportunity, probably in the horticulture space first, to leapfrog, beyond relying on chemistry all the time for weed control. Chemistry is always going to be a part of this, and don't ever think that it's ever going to go away. But the technology that's coming in terms of using lasers. I have a team working on a laser weeding module in our office right now to use that to look at alternative ways for weed control is interesting. There are a group of people that are working on, I'm not sure how many of you guys use RTK GPS and auto steer in your tractors. That's actually old technology. It's a thing of the past. The new navigation software doesn't require GPS at all. And the tractors and the machinery can navigate the fields and navigate their environment without actually knowing technically where it is. And so this use of vision cameras and LiDAR and positioning greatly simplifies our agricultural task. It's really challenging taking a robot into a farmer's field, and there's a tree down, there's a rock, there's a washout from a tile. All these things pose challenges to autonomous equipment. And so that ability to navigate an environment without needing to know the straight lines is very exciting to me. And probably the last piece is that there's a general understanding about data. We heard the one speaker talk about how much data that we collect, and I'm going to throw it out there that most of the data that farmers collect is garbage and we don't need it. The reality is that the software and the sensors and the AI systems that are coming together we're starting to be able to think about predictive technology. Being able to, as a farmer, give you an idea as to what you should be doing ahead of time with some window, because that's one of the questions that we always have. Data and maps and map books and all these things are wonderful, but really what you care about is what do I do with that? And the technology is very, very close to not take the farming away from you, but to at least give you alternatives and options and say, here are the weather conditions that you've seen, here's the crop that you're growing, here's the forecast, here's the disease model. You should choose between options 1, 2, and 3, and here's why. And that technology is not here today, but it's it's on our doorstep.
Doug, do you want to go?
Yeah, so my excitement right now is it's really about choice at planting. And I'll give a specific example with 2 products that Vive has launching in the United States in 2026. So if I think corn rootworm and how to protect my crop against that pest, I normally have to make that decision quite early. What trait do I have in my seed? And I have to make it based on what seed treatment I apply. And then at planting, if I want, I could potentially choose an in-furrow insecticide. And so I've got 3 different choices to make, all at the very, very beginning of the season, all without knowing anything about pest pressure other than what I had last year. And so Vive has a nanotechnology that changes the mobility of active ingredients in soil. Today, we can take an active ingredient and make it much more mobile. And then tomorrow, we'll be able to make it much less mobile. And the reason why that's really important is that a number of active ingredients that control below ground pests don't move in soil, which is why you have to apply them at planting. And so Vive's technology launching in 2026 says to anyone who has irrigation, we can now move active ingredients about 400% deeper into the soil than without the nanotechnology. And that after about 16 hours, those active ingredients dry in the soil like paint dries on the wall, and they don't move anymore. And so the practical ramification is that you can now take a pest like corn rootworm, and much closer to egg hatch, if you can get some scouting data, you can make that additional control decision, which of course is a cost decision. You can make it with current information. Right now, we can do that with insecticides and nematicides. And I really love the convenience that provides about using good data, not garbage data, but using good data rather than a prophylactic application in order to make control decisions. And with a pest like corn rootworm, I'm not suggesting you ever go to the field with only one of those 3 or 4 choices. I just like providing an option that happens later when you can make the choice yourself.
Well, I'm going to be the rebel on the stage here, and Chuck is putting down data. We're in the data business, so no, I'm kidding, Chuck. But no, yeah,
good data.
Yeah, it's data can easily be pretty wallpaper if, let's say, it's not used to, let's say, application. And again, I think for our philosophy, we've been trying to keep things simple because largely we want it to be, let's say, a simplified interpretation, let's say, for ones like yourselves. If, let's say, that you have, let's say, that garnered mindset for knowing with what you want to chase. And if, let's say, your fields or your factories, how efficient is, let's say, do you have, let's say, an understanding how efficient that it is and understanding with what you can control? And so for us, as, let's say, being a small niche player within, let's say, that space, this is what we are attempting to be able to do and streamline that as much as possible, especially as, let's say, this ever-evolving world becoming more and more instantaneous. What can be done to be able to help get, let's say, the information in your hands so that you can be making, let's say, those decisive decisions. So.
Good. Looks like we got a couple questions.
Yeah, mine's for the nanotechnology. Why aren't you going after the state-of-the-art products? I know you're going after the old ones that are off the market so you can own the technology, but for farmers to get the maximum benefit, go to the state-of-the-art of things so we get something to hit it out of the ballpark so it does good for us.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. In the years that we spent doing just that, we found it was difficult to work with the companies that have those proprietary active ingredients. And since it's just the two of us in the room, it comes down to money, right? What is the value that is created and who will own that value? And does that person trust me, the new guy on the block? We've only been in business now for 19 years, and we're still the new guy on the block. What I propose will happen is that as Vive continues to be successful commercially, and we prove, as folks vote with their wallets, that our technology is real and to be trusted, that we will see Vive technology built into the brand new products. Unfortunately, you probably won't know then, because it's unlikely that our partner would want to disclose that they'd asked for help in bringing their products to market. So it's almost a political answer. It's a very washy answer. I'm sorry for that. But if anyone has a patented active ingredient they'd like to make better, you know where I am tonight at dinner.
And that happens a lot. A little Canadian company that's got a great innovation, and I got to pick on Deere. Go visit John Deere. They pick your brain for a couple of days, and then they go, "Thanks for coming out. We don't need any of that good stuff that you invented up in Canada," right? Because that would be almost an insult to their research function, that somebody would come up with an innovation, from Canada. So that's it's not an uncommon political story. Over here.
One of the barriers I've found for the last 40 years is the barrier to using technologies. We don't know enough about it, and getting the education system up to what do we need to teach the kids so that they can have the skills to help your industry and help ours. So what can grain farmers and other organizations do to bring that together and get that knowledge out there and get the kids to go down alleys that will bring the skill sets that you guys need?
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
Yeah. Chuck, why don't you? Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
Oh, I love this. I don't know your name, sir, but I'll get a tattoo of it on my bicep later. I love the question so much. So I come from a family where 50% of them are teachers, right? High school, elementary, and so on. And so my wife will repeatedly tell me, I was working on a research farm, a 100-acre farm, growing about 12 different crops, steel-toed boots to work, cars dirty every day, working on nanotechnology, working on RNA, working on all this crazy stuff. And my wife would say to me, high school students have no idea what goes on behind the fence line. All they can see is the corn from the road. And she said, I wish we could just get students out into the real world any way possible to understand how amazing that world is. And so if it is Grain Farmers Ontario, or if it's the school system, making time for learning by doing as opposed to learning by writing on the tablet or writing on whatever chalkboard piece of paper, doesn't matter to me, but recognizing the value of the tour and the exposure. I don't know how it fits into a curriculum when we count minutes of learning, but I really think that, at least for my 3 kids, as soon as they see something, they don't really need anyone else to convince them it's amazing, but it's up to the adults in the room to put the child in front of that amazing, in my case, science, and they can take care of the rest.
Chuck, looks like you're chomping at the bit there. So.
Well, it's okay. That's a great answer, and I think one of the things that I don't have a good answer for is how to instill curiosity in the general mindset. I think that sometimes there's just a general lack of curiosity on how things work, and one of the things that I've seen that I think has some potential is that in the education system, sometimes I think there's been some unintentional silos built between industries. And it's very easy to try to put a label on something and say, you are going to be a scientist, and you're going to be a mathematician, and you're going to be a medical doctor, and you're going to be a pig farmer, okay? And so those labels get put on things, and then the education stream gets built around those silos, and they don't talk to each other. And we don't have the cross-pollination of the sectors. One of the things that I think would be very helpful in the education system is to encourage all these, like all of the if we're gonna do like a research project or a grad student project or something in school, to make sure that it's multidisciplinary. And I think Paul knows what I'm talking about a little bit here too, because of where his technology came, I think originated. But exposing more people to the intricacies of what goes on in agriculture, and I think if a lot of people are shocked at how many jobs within Canada agriculture is part of. It's more, I think it's at least 1 in 8. And I think as an economy, or part of the Canadian economy, agriculture and food is I think one of the biggest sectors. And so I think taking maybe agriculture out of its little silo and adding it to part of the curriculum, whether it's for doctors, whether it's for lawyers, whether it's for accountants, just broadening that, I think would be very, very helpful.
I'm even kind of put a quarter turn on your question. I'm worried there's so few farm kids left. The percentage in the population is less than 1%. And so to feed our industry, whether it's agribusiness or retail or even farm workers, we're gonna have to draw in people that have no idea what goes on the farm. They've never been on a farm. They whip by at 120 kilometers and see a field. They don't know it's corn or soybeans or wheat. And we need to attract engineers, computer scientists, other smart kids. So I'm worried that they just don't know. They don't see the opportunity, and we're going to really have a deficit as far as human resources going forward.
And I know that the students that work for us in the robotics company, most of them do not have a farm background. Mm-hmm. And once they get a taste of working in ag, they love it.
Yeah.
They're just like, I think my one technician, he said yesterday, he's like, I get to work outside, I get to work on a piece of equipment, and I get to work on a computer all at the same time.
And help feed the world, right?
It's very, very exciting.
Yeah.
But again, and it was just a by chance job ad that he happened to see, right? That brought him there.
4 o'clock, Julie.
So thank you. I do appreciate you keeping the ship on time. Thank you, Joe, Chuck, Paul, and Doug. That was a great way to end our session today, so thank you.